Today's our last class, so I just want to conclude with some remarks about where genomics is and where it's going. If you've learned nothing else in this course, I hope that at least you now appreciate that genomics is all around you. It's even in your own neighborhood. So here's an article about a SoHo boutique that sells you your own genome information for $2,500. And in the next few years, that price is going to come way down. And so you should expect to be able to pay less than $1,000 for your entire genome sequence pretty soon. And you can decide whether this is a good investment or not. We've talked in this course about how this type of genome information can be used, and in particular about how difficult it is to say with any certainty that particular alleles affect particular complex traits. DNA has also invaded our popular culture in many ways. Here's one of my favorite examples from the TV series, Heroes.
A man called yesterday. A Professor Suresh. He was a geneticist. I wanted to talk about DNA. About your DNA.
Did you tell him anything? I mean, you didn't tell him anything, did you?
Of course I didn't tell him anything. He found you. He knows.
Geneticist. Who are these people?
Geneticists. Who are these people? And not only have geneticists become characters in fictional dramas, but real geneticists have actually become in-demand celebrities on the talk show circuit.
Thank you. My guest tonight was the first human to map his own genome. Well, he's not going to get so much as a cheek swab from me. Please welcome Dr. Craig Venter. Dr. Venter, thanks so much for coming here. Now, you are the very first person. You're the founder of Genomics, correct?
That's correct.
You mapped your own genome. What's the big deal? I hear a lot about it. Everybody says it's going to change the entire world. Everything's different now. Why?
Well, we're at the earliest stages of interpreting it, but the genetic code and the information that we inherit from our ancestors directly through our parents.
Ancestors, you mean Jesus. Go ahead, yes.
Depends on how far back you go. But
2,000 years.
And it'll tell us the first time what's nature, what's nurture, and how to predict the future in terms of genetic risk for disease that has a chance of changing medicine into a preventative disease paradigm.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what you said, but I think I heard you say that we can lose weight using the genome. Is it like, can we make diet pills and stuff like that with it? Because that would get people excited. I
would like to, not yet.
Okay. Now, other people were trying to map the genome at the same time. The Human Genome Project. Who did it first, you or the Human Genome Project?
Well, we declared it a tie, but we really won. You know.
Okay. That's actually a trick question. God did it first, okay? What makes you think you can do a better job with life and genetics than God?
We had computers.
Yes? Little more serious note, it really is an amazing time to be doing genetic and genomic research and to be alive and sort of experiencing the benefits and the risks of it. A couple of years ago, Science Magazine did a whole issue basically declaring the study of human genetic variation to be sort of the breakthrough of the year. And I just want to play you a clip from their website that sort of drives home how much things have changed, you know, basically in the time you've been in college.
For the last 12 months, the big story has been finally the tools have arrived to allow us to discover the genetic variations that predict risk of common diseases, the diseases that fill up our hospitals and our clinics with people who have chronic illnesses for which we have inadequate treatments. I'm talking about diabetes, the common cancers, mental illness, asthma, gallstones, atrial fibrillation, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, all of those conditions where in just the last few months we have discovered very significant genetic contributors to risk. Each one of those gives us a wholly new idea about what this disease is all about, and a whole bunch of follow-on projects can get going immediately to try to figure out how to prevent the disease or to cure it in people who've developed it. So we really have crossed a bridge into new territory in terms of understanding the most common, most complex conditions.
And so it's been a long effort by many, many groups around the world to get in a position to do these studies, and we honestly didn't know the answer until the last year. And in fact, if you look at a diagram that reports the rate of discovery of contributors to common human diseases as they exist in the clinic, from, let's say, the years 2000 to 2004 or so, the rate of discovery is across a wide variety of diseases, maybe 1 new discovery per year, maybe 2. That was actually faster than in the previous decade, when you could go a decade without any new contributors to common diseases being found through this genetic approach. And in the last year, in 2007, there are probably 75 bona fide reproducible discoveries across a wide variety of diseases of novel contributors to common diseases through this genetic approach.
Our technology is advancing very quickly. Already it's possible, on the basis of a couple of companies that are marketing directly to consumers, for people to have their DNA tested in hundreds of thousands of places if they're willing to cough up $1,000 or so to get that done. The question is, exactly how would you use that information?
So the more we solve these mysteries, the more we learn about what our DNA actually contains, the more issues that will arise. There's questions about privacy, and there's also questions about discrimination based on our DNA.
And of course, since people have a right to know their DNA information, that's a fine thing. But the question of how often this will improve their health and how often this will cause unnecessary anxiety and whether or not we're really doing more harm than good, that will be something for society to watch quite a bit. Because there's not just the potential for improved lifestyle and prevention, which is a wonderful thing. There's, of course, the risk of unnecessary anxiety and concern. There's actually the risk that people will begin to think about using this in selecting mates or in reproductive choices, which might be something that people have different opinions on how desirable that is. We need to have a lot of discussion in society about what's the right use of this information, what's the right way to do it in the medical context, what's the rights of individuals to get that information and to profit from that information. And I think that if we have that discussion, we'll probably, I believe in the wisdom of people, I'm sure we'll come to good answers.
Okay, so I mean, it's obvious just from looking at that chart they showed how things are really taking off. And there you had sort of an optimistic point of view of things to sort of give some reality to it. If you were reading the news this week, you might have seen the first case being brought under the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, where a woman is suing a former employer for wrongful termination based on a genetic test result she had. First ever case like that. And we'll see how things like that develop. As you also know from taking the course, it's not all about human medicine and human disease. Genomics is telling us a lot about all aspects of life on Earth, and it's contributing to hopefully solving some of our most pressing problems. For example, the environment and the habitats of creatures we care about or depend on. So, as you might be aware, honeybees are having a particularly difficult time. They're going through what's called colony collapse disorder, where for not completely explained reasons, many honeybee colonies are succumbing to some disease, probably. This is from Haagen-Dazs, by the way. So this is their, the ice cream guys, right? Their sort of public service campaign to help the honeybees. And it might seem like, oh, cute honeybees, that's why people care, but corporations care a lot because honeybees are responsible for a large amount of pollination of agricultural crops. And as they go, so do those crops. It probably doesn't surprise you to learn that one of the contributing scientific research approaches to trying to understand colony collapse disorder is genomics. So this was an article published a couple of years ago where they did metagenomics, that is sequencing every piece of DNA they can find inside bees to try and find what diseases might be affecting them. So I hope you've sort of learned a lot throughout the semester, both about sort of genomics as it applies to us and our health and our diversity, and also about other animals. I've learned from you, so I really enjoyed coming to your presentations. I have to declare a winner. And so this group is the winner of So You Think You Can Genome. Jillian, Brian, Jacques, Lauren, and Richard did a really great presentation centering on the on the platypus genome and what it tells us about a variety of things, from how mammals change from laying eggs to giving live birth, where poisonous compounds like venoms come from, how various genes affect cancer, and how the platypus genome might actually tell us something about it. So really, really, really great presentation. There are other very, very good presentations too. I'm going to sort of leave some out, and so I apologize for that. But one of the really entertaining and informative ones was Joey, Kevin, Talia, Victoria, and Sriram's news show. And so if you didn't get to see that, I encourage you to ask them to give you their sort of news pose from their intro. Carly did a really nice one on where domesticated chickens come from. Lily did a really nice one on ant behavior and the genes that affect it. Erin did a really good one on solving an ancient sort of Egyptian puzzle on how a particular king died. And Pavlova, of course, gave her puppet show on beneficial bacteria, which hit her targeted audience really well. You've also been teaching each other, right? So the blog posts are going strong, and so every time I read this, I see, in some ways I don't have to read the newspaper anymore because someone will post on the things that I would be looking for anyway. Okay, so blood-sucking insects, Neanderthals, and so on and so on. So this is a great resource for me, and I thank you for it, for really keeping up with all the great discoveries that are affecting us. The final thing I want to leave you with is that when you have a powerful science with a lot of importance in society, you really have to ask the question, who is benefiting from it? And so there are some scary trends that I want to make you aware of. So this was a paper that came out last year that really puts in perspective the idea of genomics being used for health. And what they did was they broke it down into different populations of people and how they were represented in the various studies that were done. Okay, so we all know that these are loaded terms. They probably should have said ancestry here. Okay, and so you have European, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, Jewish, Gambian, Micronesian, and mixed. Okay, and the vast, 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 vast majority of genomic studies are done with only European-only populations. And there are reasons for focusing on particular populations when you do these kind of studies because of things like founder effects. But there's a clear bias here as to where the research is being done, and therefore who might benefit from it. Okay, and that's something that I hope will be corrected as we go forward. The other thing, of course, is that some technological advances seem wonderful and seem like they're made to benefit people, but often they have either unforeseen consequences or consequences that can be foreseen, but they're benefiting someone and not someone else. And so this is an example from a few years ago of a cotton crop that failed in India due to it actually failed 3 times in 1 year for either too much rain or too little rain. And it led to a lot of farmers basically becoming destitute and in some cases committing suicide. And what was interesting is that in this article, one of the facts that was left out is that the cotton crop that failed was mostly Monsanto's BT cotton. Okay? And I'm not saying that because it was the BT cotton it failed, but it was definitely at least a contributing factor to the indebtedness that led to the real desperation that people were feeling at the time. Okay, so we have some hopefulness around genomics, and we also have some cautions that we really have to be careful about. And I hope that this course has given you a way to think about those things as you live your lives and keep being confronted by them.